My father hid my identity for over a decade, but when he announced to the pack that I was his daughter, the entire North cheered and all I wanted was to run. Chapter 28. I was astounded. The witch was crying. The moment I entered the dungeon cell, her weathered face crumpled, and tears began to flow. Large droplets cascaded down the deep furrows of her wrinkled cheeks as her gaze traveled the length of my body. She strained against her shackles, the iron chains rattling uselessly against the damp stone walls. "What is wrong with her?" I asked Father, my heart pounding erratically in my chest. The air in the cell was thick with tension and the acrid smell of fear. "I don't know. She said she wanted to speak to you, and now—" He exhaled sharply, his embarrassment palpable. "Now this." Steeling myself, I took 4 deliberate steps towards the witch, my boots echoing in the confined space. I squatted before her, my eyes boring into hers with unbridled fury. She sniffled, shrinking away from my proximity. "You called for me." I spoke, my head tilted in mock curiosity. The witch flinched, pressing herself against the cold wall. "I don't like having my time wasted. Maeve, what is it you need?" My voice was sharp, authoritative. A strangled sound escaped her throat. "Don't make me sit out of you. You must forget that I own your soul." "Luna," the witch's voice quavered as sweat beaded on her brow. "Luna, I am so sorry. I no longer take sorry as an answer." Witch. I cut her off, hearing Father's deep intake of breath behind me. "I order you to tell me the truth. Why did you call for me, and what are your plans?" "At my command." Her chest heaved and her throat constricted visibly. "The witch of all witches has placed a spell on me to never utter a word of my plans to anyone other than a fellow witch. But I own your soul, and you told me partly of your plans when you were in the castle." I exhaled, frustration coloring my words. "Speak of the truth and nothing else." "That's because you own my soul." Her eyes darted nervously to the guards and my father. "But the bastards don't." "Listen here, you," Father began, his alpha wolf pride clearly wounded. "Get out," I interrupted, turning to face the men. "I will inform you of whatever is said tonight." Father's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. The red mist staining his tan skin betrayed his embarrassment, but I couldn't bring myself to care. My mind was already racing, torn between unraveling this witch's secrets and pondering why Luca had left wearing armor, not to mention slain man's cryptic words. "Follow me." "Men," Father commanded, giving me one last look that spoke volumes. He was letting my behavior slide, but only this once. "Yeah, leave," I thought, watching them file out. Once silence enveloped us, I stood, facing the witch with renewed intensity. "Speak." A violent shiver racked her frail body. My brows furrowed, anticipation and dread coiling in my stomach. "The revolution," she whispered, eyes red. "You are the cause of the revolution. What the hell are you talking about?" I growled, "Stop uttering this nonsense. I didn't notice it much in the castle because, well, I spent most of my days running away from you, and anybody else could have had green eyes." Her voice faltered. "But yours are green. Yours are exactly as the mother witch described them." My fists clenched at the thought of a witch speaking of me. "You will tell me exactly why a witch was describing me." Her chest rose as I ordered her soul. "The prophecy." She shivered in her rags like lips chattering on a cool night. "You will be the cause of our extinction. The witch demands you be killed." My back clyded against the wall as I stared at the witch in disbelief. Me. And what was this prophecy everyone seemingly knew about that I didn't? "You best not tell your father of this." She swallowed, eyes shifting left to right as if she feared an intruder would catch us. "You must know his heart has grown weak." "How would you know?" "I can smell it from here." Her nose crinkled. "Why do you think he has 7 men guard him wherever he goes? Why do you think he hasn't challenged you yet? Regardless of your bratty behavior. He fears you." My breath caught in my throat. "But he fears losing you more than losing himself at your hands." "Stop," I let out. "Stop making me feel bad for him." Her lips shut at my command and she sunk in her seat. "Goddess, I hated how easily I felt guilt, especially towards my father, the man who abandoned me, left me to fend for myself and for his name and dishonors everyday me by lying about my origins to his pack. Also, he could have it easier for himself and his new family. Life was a sick game of survival. It made my stomach churn. I had to change the subject. Speak of this prophecy. My voice came out raspy. Utter every word the witch said and what power she holds. There is not limit to a witch's power. All she needs is a victim in her own madness. The witch quivered. If powerful enough, a witch could flip this plant upside down and swallow it whole. How many years of experience would a witch need to do such a thing? Thousands of years. Has any witch lived that long? The witch's eyes sparkled. Our queen is 14 centuries old. God, you are no match for her. Nobody is. Where does she live? Do you not want to hear of the prophecy? Don't avoid the question. I warned. Speak of her whereabouts and then continue to explain the prophecy. Her jaw clenched. She lives in the tallest tree of the outskirts. The only tree with green leaves. The tree of the west. The one guarded by 7 monsters. Precisely. The witch looked behind me before speaking again. Now the prophecy. The lichen with eyes of thine brings the witches their cause of demise. As bright as the moon strikes the heart of all magic's cocoon. Revolution rises raw and time no longer brews. Until years have passed. Time will no longer debut, only orchids with souls as dark as nights warm the kingdom of all wolves. She leans forward. Until the warrior hears the trumpets, she will remain in her cage, leaving behind darkness and rampage. What the hell? What are the orchids implying? I asked, anxiety filling my veins. What cage do you speak of? How many years will have to pass for what to occur? What darkness will I leave behind? I haven't finished. The witch snapped her head to me. One of 3 northern souls will perish to the other realm. The birds will tell all truth. I waited. Lips parted. Is that it? I asked, because I understood absolutely nothing. That is it. My jaw clenched. How powerful is the mother witch? I asked, dreading the dress I was wearing and ditching to put my armor on. The witch tapped her head. She can get in your head and twist your reality. Make you see things that aren't real. Make you feel things that exist only in your head and her imagination. She dropped her hand. Fear not. Though, witch though, she isn't able to play with nebulous or displaced planets. Not yet at least. Is there any way I can protect myself from her? I watched as the witch's throat constricted, evoking an obnoxious sound out of her throat. What? I asked through gritted teeth. It's her spell. Well, snap out of it. I commanded. I order your soul to be relieved of her spell. The witch let out a strangled scream as sparkles of dark purple began evaporating out of her soul and into the dungeoned air. Tears steamed down the wrinkles on her cheeks and her body stretched as greatly as it could within the constraints on her ankles and wrist. The sight was unruly and even forced to gasp out of me. But once it was done, once the aura of darkness saturated and her soul dissipated into thin air, I was glad. She laid limp, body barely seated on the chair. Shockingly, I was glad her chest was still rising, a steady rhythm of up, down, up, down. I would put her to good use. I would squeeze every bit of information she had left in her like a lem until she had nothing left in her. Not even a soul. Wretched bitch. Goddess. When did I become so violent? Luca mentioned something about a Luna complex, but I felt nothing like one. Really? I felt the same as had been the day I met Luca. Sighing, I turned around and left the room, slamming the door shut behind me. To my surprise, all 7 of Father's men, including Father himself, were stood awfully close to the door. Perhaps they'd been eavesdropping to the sound of me screaming at her for your old witch. That, I didn't know. What I did know, however, was that they were just as confused as I was. I'm sure you've heard already. I began. I'm one of the guards, but the witch is fast asleep and is not likely to wake up any time soon. Standing beside the door will only do you so much. He blushed furiously and looked to the ground. almost bowing to me. Judging by the slimness of his body, he was most probably still a teenager, maybe 15. But he was tall, almost as tall as Luca, but not quite there yet. I almost felt guilty for being so cold, but I had to be. Nobody would take me seriously if I was kind, especially after what happened with 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬. Being young is not an excuse. With a wind in my hair, I strolled past the men, leaving behind only the sound of my heels as I went up the steps of the underground dungeon. It was satisfying feeling their eyes lay on the back of my body, watching as I left them empty-handed. Some of their eyes were gazing a bit lower than what I was comfortable with, but I grew from that. As I reached the last step, I heard Father growl, "If that gaze lowers just 1 more centimeter, I will pick your eyes out with my claws." "Guard," Father warned. "Watch yourself." And so I left the dungeon and entered the wonderful northern market. I'd been strolling through the wonderfully built market for an hour, hands wrapped around my own body. The lantern-lit streets, accompanied by the occasional performances, drums, snake songs, and belly dancers, brought a warmth in me I didn't know existed. It was the kind of warmth that didn't make you happy, rather than one that made you content with the feelings you had brewing inside you. The one that made you feel stable regardless of all the turmoil growing. Where was Luca? The question circled my mind for several minutes before being occupied by how in the world 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬 thought I was responsible for the death of his child. I thought about linking him, but I didn't want to bother him. What if he was working or sorting out important matters between the 4 kingdoms? Oddly enough, I forgot that he was the king, the man that ruled the world. To hell with it. "Where are you?" I linked. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬, guard of all guards. A voice called out for me and I spun around, sawing content lie at the face that accompanied it. "Ollie," I smiled warmly as I approached his booth. "Your paintings are beautiful." He had a small cart that was decorated with paintings and bells so that, whenever it moved, it would alert passers. It was beautiful, littered with calligraphy and traditional carvings. "Thank you, but I'm saddened that you weren't able to see the painting of you with your brother." He shook his head. "It turned out beautiful. You heard what happened. Urgent matters need urgent actions." I ran my fingers over a wonderful pocket-sized painting of a purple cat before looking back up at him. "But I'll take your word for it. I can't wait to see it when I paused, swallowing. "Back at the Alpha's home. Back at your father's home." "You mean? How can I say that when nobody in this market recognizes me as the Alpha's only daughter?" I whispered through the loud chatter of the market. Ollie looked taken aback, his old brows rising. "You haven't heard." I shook my head. "The Alpha stated he wants to speak to all pack members tomorrow at the auditorium." A smile rose to his lips. "Said he had an important announcement to make." My lips parted. "You're being serious?" I don't see why I would be joking. Plus, it was about time. The man finally came to his senses. I scoffed. "Lycans really are weird." Back at the castle, I used to treat him with respect. Showed him love and mercy despite all his wrongdoings. Yet he still didn't tell me of all this. But the minute I ignore him and treat him with a small ounce of the disrespect I have stored within me, he suddenly decides to come to his sense. My eyes went to the purple cat to find some form of comfort. They say the human side of us is our weakness for a reason. It makes us feel things our wolves don't. He eyed the painting with the purple cat. "Take it if you want it." "Oh, no. I was just admiring it," I insist. "My daughter loved the painting as well. It makes me feel well that someone likes it the way she did." He picked it up and to hand it to me, forcing a horrible blush to stain my cheeks. "Please, but you have a special memory attached to the painting. It is rude to deny a gift. Have you forgotten the culture of your origins?" He rose an offended brow. My mouth snapped shut and I gulped. I bowed and accepted the painting, hating how hot my cheeks felt. The dry paint felt wonderful underneath my skin, its bumps and texture satisfying to the touch. As I stared down at the painting, I wondered how he got each hair on the cat's body so perfectly. He really was talented. "Thank you," I said, shifting my eyes to look at him. "It's beautiful. What's more beautiful is the fact that your male is walking down the market holding a beautiful box in his hand. What? I spun around at whiplash speed only to find Luca walking down the market, passing by the several people that bowed to him with ease. He held a large box in his hand that was wrapped beautifully in black ribbons. What was so beautiful, though, was the new scar imprinted right atop his eyes. And the anger filled my body at the thought of anybody attacking my male. I ran towards him, painting held in my hand as our eyes connected. Blue meeting green. Green meeting blue. In contrast to the worry and angst I was feeling, Luca seemed proud and excited. I felt those emotions storm through our bond. "I'm here." He smiled a masculine smile at me, answering my link minutes after I called out for him. "Luca, Luca." I let out. "Worried? Where have you been?" "Don't say my name too loudly. Remember, I'm supposed to remain a secret." "What's in that box?" I asked, ignoring him out of angst. "And who scratched the top of your eye?" He chuckled. "Calm down, Verdi. I was out getting the present your father requested I bring before marking you." It was only then I realized he was wearing a suit. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬 fame fancy. Midnight blue sight. Just the sight of him made my heart pump madly. "Luca, we have months still that has to happen." I sighed, shaking my head. "What if something happened to you? I'm leaving to the castle tomorrow." 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬. My lips parted as I stared up at him. "Already why?" 𝐿𝐿. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the warmth of his hands seeping into my cheeks. "As much as I would like to stay here with you. Duty calls. I have paperwork the size of mountains due right this second." Oh, I looked down, just when things were getting good. He tilted my chin upwards, frowning at me. "You could always come with me, sweetheart. Duty calls." I mumbled. "The witch spoke today. I have to stay and observe her." His jaw ticked. "Why, Calden, we have been commoners. I imagine life is much easier in the middle-class realm." I huffed out a laugh. "Middle class and above, to be precise. Anything below is just as bad this." He wrapped an arm over my shoulder and sighed, somewhat stressed. Those swarm of butterflies made their way up my stomach again at his touch, and I smiled into his chest, completely ignoring the looks of confusion and shock passing by us. "Come on. Let's show your father the gift." We arrived in front of father's door. I still didn't know what the gift was, but Lucas said he had to fight to beings for it. Really? I tried my best to find out if by fight he meant kill, but I couldn't. The man's face turned to stone just at the thought of it. Luca also liked the painting I held. Said he wanted one of me because of how small and portable it was, and I promised to tell Ollie to make him one. However, because of how short the walk was, I couldn't bring myself to explain the prophecy I had been given that night. "Do you want to knock?" he asked, raising a brow at me. "You do it," he teased, knocking on the door. I stuck my tongue out at him before looking back at the door. A maid opened it with wide eyes. She bowed immediately, body slumped with fear. "Please, make yourself feel at home, King. Guard, I apologize, but I don't think the time is appropriate for you to be here at this time, so." "That is my daughter, Aaliyah. She can enter the home whenever she wants to." "You are excused," father said inside the home. Leela hatted. "Come in." I gulped, heart beating erratically. For the second time that day, my cheeks reddened to the point of pain. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay," I assured, voice raspy. "You can leave now." The maid scurried away, leaving Luca, my father, and I in silence. "Come in, please." Father eyed Luca as he shut the door behind us. "What do you hold in your hand?" "The gift," Alpha hatted. Luca's tone was curt and his voice deep. "Open it." Father paused before grabbing the box from Luca and placing it in the ground. He pulled the ribbon open and lifted the cover of the box. His eyes wide and a gasp left his lips. He snapped his face to Lucas. "How in the world did you attain this?" Father asked, baffled. I spent the day in the outskirts looking for her. It was my head's turn to snap to Lucas. "You did what?" A small meow sounded, and out of the box jumped a cat with fur the color of dark lavender and eyes the color of bright amber. The cat padded towards me and nudged her head to my exposed ankles, purring at the feel of my skin on hers. With a slack jaw, I reached for the cat and lifted her to my chest. She vibrated against me, licking my knuckles ever so gently before sliding her eyes closed and resting. "Luca," I gushed, petting the purring pet's head. "Is this why you wore armor before leaving?" "Yes." "Is this why you have a new scar healing atop your eyes?" "Yes, it is." "Verdi." He smiled down at me, scratching the chin of the sleeping cat in my hands with his index finger. "I hope you like the gift," Alpha added. "It's wonderful." Father's face remained flabbergasted. "I imagine you would get me a pot of gold or a field of roses." "I live to exceed expectations." Luca allowed one side of his lips to rise. "Does this mean my mark on your daughter's neck can stay?" My eyes snapped to his, and, to my surprise, they were already glued to mine. I swallowed, understanding exactly what Luca meant by his question. He was subconsciously asking my father for my hand in marriage, and, while I knew one day I would marry him, the idea stressed me greatly. Just the thought of marriage drove my thoughts to whatever my mother and father had the exact opposite of what love was supposed to be. "You can have that and more." My father walked up to Luca and patted his shoulders, sending him an impressed smile. "Welcome to the family, son." Son, the word seemed to elude a newly found softness in Luca's eyes. His brows rested from the furrow it was set in, and his lips parted. The brief conversation I had with him in the carriage, where he explained how he and his father used to be close before his mother's obsession with power eventually killed him, came into mind. He loved me more than I loved him, and that was something rare. He said something along the lines of that. Eventually, Luca regained his composure and coughed into his fist, nodding. "Thank you. Your approval is deeply appreciated." "I sure hope it is." Father shifted his eyes to me. "I hope you will be attending the pack assembly tomorrow. I have important news to bring to the pack." Taking a deep breath, I nodded, unconsciously linking my arms through the warmth of Luca's muscular, large ones. "I will be attending." Father smiled. "I'm glad, Leela." I wished I felt the same way, because that day, I had an awful feeling settle atop the depth of my heart. It wasn't a prevalent feeling, rather a temporary wave of heaviness overcoming my body. Judging by the way he tightened his grip on me, I sensed that Luca felt what I felt. That night, Luca and I slept next to each other's. No pillows, no borders nor armor getting in the way of our bodies. The cat, who I named Lena, snuggled between Luca and I, allowing her purrs to lull us to sleep. I dreamt of love, of a future with Luca, of my own kids, but I also dreamt of loss, of a burden, of the prophecy the moon had bestowed upon me. It was a tragically beautiful night, saturated with colorful nostalgia and deepening anxiety. I couldn't describe it any other way. Chapter 29. Luca promised he would stay until after the assembly. I appreciated that he was putting me over his work, even if it were just for a few hours. He had almost for days of unkempt paperwork from all 4 kingdoms and wanted to see my father confess to his wrongs. We were currently sat in the auditorium, waiting for the Alpha to approach the stage. Luca and I were seated right at the front row, and behind us cascaded the rest of the pack in order of ranking Beta all the way to Omega. It was a foreign feeling, being seated right at the front of the hall. In the past, I was always right behind the Gamma S, in between poverty and the middle class. So adjusting to this stark change was weird, to say the least. His hand rested atop of mine and squeezed, spreading a comforting warmth throughout the entirety of my body. My eyes snapped to his and I smiled. "Stop stressing. Verdi." He took my hand in his and placed it above his thigh. "Your father will do what is right. What if what he thinks is right is indeed wrong? You should anticipate the better outcome. Regardless, that would simply be setting myself up for heartbreak." I clicked my tongue and sent him a wink. "Best to keep the bar low. Are you suggesting I didn't exceed your expectations as a male? He rose a brow. And please, do wink more often. The sight is ravishing. My cheeks heated and my jaw snapped shut. Damn it. Never again. I mumbled just so that he could hear. He chuckled and shook his head. Eyes going back to the stage. 𝐊𝐼𝐬 exceeded not just my expectation of what my male would be, but my expectation of what a human could be. He was sweet, yet all the more powerful. Sinfully handsome, yet all the more adorable and needy when we were alone. He made me feel special in a world where I most certainly was, and I adored it. Our bond sizzled with passion that was tended to. A beautiful chaos that felt like it was about rupture from deep within my chest. But I didn't mind it. In fact, being with 𝐊𝐼𝐬 made me appreciate the chaos rather than attest it. All rise. At the guard's command, the guests of the auditorium all rose from their seats in unison. All except 𝐊𝐼𝐬. The king. He rose to no one but himself, wearing the traditional northern armor. Father walked to the stage and nodded. You may all be seated. I sat down and 𝐊𝐼𝐬 immediately took my hand in his and placed it above his thigh, surprising me delightfully. Welcome to the 18th Assembly, men and women of the North. Today, I come bearing news that may bring upon you an uncomfortable weight regarding the War of 1689. He took a deep breath, eyes shifting from the audience to mine. However, that news will be replaced with something that I had been hiding from you out of my own selfish desire. Something I am sure will strengthen your pride of the Northern leaders. I swallowed down my emotions at his words. Goddess, I can feel my heart beating out of my ass. At the thought, 𝐊𝐼𝐬 pursed his lips to stop himself from snorting, which made him look somewhat constipated. I kicked him in the shin and the laugh in his lips was replaced with light-hearted fury. The War of 1689 was no accident. My brave people. It was no fire that struck our lands. It was an attack intended to destroy not only our economy but also our people. The leader of this attack is none other than the Luna of Lycans herself. Gasps struck throughout the crowd. Fear not. She is currently being questioned further for her involvement in any of our droughts and will be imprisoned till the day she dies. The king himself has sanctioned this decision. This means war. My people. Not only against the Luna, but also the Westerners who have been found accused of looting our oil and gold, while also playing a heavy role in the War of 1689. Father breathed in. Any questions before I proceed? An old man rose from his seat. Speak. Elder Basil. Will this be a cold war or a physical war? Elder Basil stood on his cane, voice croak-y as he spoke. It is currently a cold war. We have stopped selling them any of our resources and banned them from entering our lands. Upon that, all of the troops they had deployed in our lands had been deported back to their homelands until they return the resources they stole and damaged from us. If they do not respond accordingly, and by that I mean to send us billions in aid. Father's eyes sparkled. Then we will strike. The crowd roared in approval, clapping and screaming a stream of yes and yeah. It made my heart swell with pride and even ignited an impressed smile from 𝐊𝐼𝐬, the king himself. The sight was contagious. After answering all of the Northerners' questions, Father nodded and took a deep breath. The fact that he, the Alpha of the North, looked nervous in front of his entire pack made me nervous. I was sure nobody but I noticed, but the smallest of sweats ran down his forehead. I had been hiding my past from my people. And as an alpha, it is wrong to lie to your followers. More importantly, his jaw clenched. It is wrong to those whom I have hidden from you. I felt 𝐊𝐬 who was sat 6 seats away from me look at me but didn't dare look back at him. Before I became the alpha of the northern lands, you all know I had a family. One where 𝐊𝐬 had it was my first son. For the nth time that day, he took a deep breath. The sight made my breathing halt. It made me clench my hand around 𝐊𝐼𝐬's thigh and force my lips to part in angst. He was about to confess, about to expose me as the only daughter of the blessed northern lands. You don't know, though, that I had a daughter. The crowd gasped softly, exchanging looks of shock between one another, one with eyes the color of her mother's and hands of steel. one that holds the title of the first female royal guard of all 4 kingdoms. Our eyes connected. Brown meeting green. Green meeting brown. The daughter is 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬. Silence swarmed the entire hall. Complete and utter anxiety, enticing silence. I shut my eyes tightly, wishing I had never asked Father if his pack knew I existed in the first place. All until someone in the back of the crowd clapped, followed by another clap in the distance. My eyes snapped open. It wasn't until the entire crowd joined 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐬, the man that started the fiesta of claps, that I realized they were all ecstatic at the news that had been bestowed upon them. My lips parted as I stood up and turned around, watching as the avalanche of people behind me roared in approval and pride. I felt it in the bond I had with the pack. I felt it as like it had just been dipped in electric elixir. They jumped in joy and completion, even hugging one another. The strongest warrior is a northerner. The protector of all 4 kingdoms is one of us. The first female guard holds our blood. My body jittered in excitement and delight at the approval of my people. I couldn't believe they were so joyous at the news they had just been bombarded with. Lucas' eyes connected with mine, and he smiled up at me, sending me a wink. My heart fluttered. They were proud. For a second I was almost embarrassed for you. I punched Luca in the shoulder at his words, and he laughed as we walked down a trail of palm trees. Really? Really? I thought the silence was going to turn never-ending. I swear, I felt my heart beat out of your arse. He cackled at my words. I almost burst out into laughter when I heard you say that. Goddess, imagine the look on your father's face if I had actually laughed. That explains why you look so constipated. His face snapped to the side of mine. What? I said nothing. He said I looked constipated. His tone was offended. He'll have you know I have a very healthy digestive tract. I snorted. Good to know. I saw 𝐿𝐴 at the end of the trail. His hands wrapped around 𝐿𝐴's shoulders. My steps halted. What is it? Asked Luca. That 𝐿𝐴 is female. I gulped. I don't want to talk to him right now. Luca's hand wrapped around my wrist, forcing my eyes to connect with his. Better face the problem now than later, comes Verdi. I took a breath, feeling my lungs widen. Well, just walk past then. If he calls for me, then I'll speak to him, but I will not be the one to initiate conversation with him. My jaw clenched. Can you believe he blamed me for the death of his unborn child? Luca winced before pulling me from my wrist to walk beside him. No, from what you've described of him in the past, HS definitely changed, and I don't know if it's for the better. I leaned into Luca's chest, allowing his warmth to merge with mine. He was my cocoon, protecting me from not only the cold but also the evil spirits that roamed the roads we strolled through. My male never failed to force a trail of sparks to run up my spine. He never failed to make me feel like I was me. The sound of my heels forced 𝐿𝐴's head to rise from 𝐊𝐴's shoulders. He sniffed the air and turned to me, eyes widening. Just as his lips parted to speak to me, Talia spoke. 𝐿𝐴, she called for me, rushing to reach for my hands. I want to apologize on 𝐿𝐴's behalf for accusing you of such a thing. I was taken aback. How did you know? The day it happened, he came to me and confessed to his unruly words. I didn't talk to him and feared that you'd hate me for it. She swallowed, shaking her head. I would never blame you for such a thing. I went looking for you. Yes, but I knew my baby was gone the minute the first bomb had struck. You had nothing to do with it. Oddly enough, her words relieved my shoulders from a weight I didn't know existed. 𝐿𝐴, I'm sorry. 𝐿𝐴's eyes faced the ground as the afternoon sun kissed his tan skin. It wasn't until I saw my paints that I realized how much of an ass I've been to you. My heart squeezed painfully. I painted the stars for your child. You know, I was going to give you the canvas the day of the war, but it turned to ashes before I could reach you. Luca's eyes snapped to mine. You painted something for him. I nodded, eyes glossing. So to have you accuse me of killing him when I would willingly die to protect him hurts. 𝐿𝐴, to have you tell me I'm acting like a child when, years ago, you would have told me it was okay to cry. Hurts, 𝐶𝐬 I'm sorry, he stuttered, unknowing of what to say. Really? Really? I don't know what happened to me. I always thought that if I trained more, if I was an actual soldier, I would have been able to protect 𝐿𝐲 from those monsters. He wrapped a protective arm around 𝐿𝐲's waist. My wolf was distraught. He wouldn't let me sleep unless I trained day and night. He made me get rid of my paints. 𝐿𝐲 saved some of my drawings so he didn't destroy them. I hope this puts things into perspective for you. Sweetheart, but your brother still loves to paint. He still watches the stars stroll through the skies like he did when you were 12. No, I don't. Shut it, 𝐿𝐲. Your masculinity can wait till when we get home. 𝐿𝐲 locked his jaw shut at 𝐊𝐲's words. He just doesn't show it to anyone but me. He wants to prove to everybody that he is a soldier when, at heart, he's an artist. I even caught him painting when I was pretending to be asleep. Really? I rose my brows, a small smile staining my lips. I'm glad. I'd love to see some of your paintings. Perhaps we could showcase them when I go back to the castle. It would be great to have a northerner's paintings covering every inch of that wretched castle, Luca pointed out. And the 𝐿𝐲's eyes brightened. Goddess, my skills are not as robust as they used to be. You painted a dog from your imagination like it was standing right in front of you, 𝐿𝐲 exclaimed, swatting him across the chest. I guess that's where I got it from. I really am sorry, 𝐿𝐲. 𝐿𝐲 took a step forward. If I was scared you would strangle me, I would hug you right now. Both flashbacks of when I threatened to slit his throat rushed back to my head. He deserved it. I promise I won't strangle you, I said, spreading my arms. Brother. He smiled and wrapped his arms around me, rubbing my back. I don't deserve your forgiveness, 𝐿𝐲, but if you give me time, I will show you that I can change from my ways. I expect you to. I mumbled into his chest. Please never stop painting. The goddess gave you the gift for a reason. I'll try, he promised, pulling away from me. For you, I will try. A large smile came into my lips at his words, one that made my cheeks ache and my teeth shine. I could hear how his heart was booming in his chest. I felt how nervous he was. I was going to completely excuse his behavior, though I had to learn not to give others, especially family, my heart so easily. It would only weaken me in the process. We were invited by 𝐿𝐲 to have lunch at Father's palace after that. It was a wonderful feeling to be surrounded by my family, so much that I didn't mind the fact that I was seated right next to 𝐿𝐲. For the first time, I didn't feel resentment towards her. I watched as she poured rice into my plate and topped it with all sorts of meat, appreciating both her beauty and kindness. We laughed and sang northern folklore songs. Mater threw some rice onto Father's armor, but he didn't mind. Luca kept a hand above my thigh the entire lunch, even forced himself to eat with only one hand because he didn't want me to leave him. Involuntarily, I would lean my head against his should every few bites I had. Nobody seemed to mind. Especially Luca. He loved. It was so fun. The most fun it had in a long while. But the fun dissipated when Luca had to leave. The sun was just about to set and the carriage was ready right outside Father's palace, ready to stroll through the market and outside of the Northern Kingdom. The entire pack watched as our family bowed down to him, I included. They watched as Luca sent me one last gaze of need, of desire as he entered the carriage. They watched as my lips quivered and my eyes watered at the view of the carriage closing and the horses padding away. They all cheered for him, the leader of all 𝐿𝐲s, and he waved back at them, smiling a sad smile. His eyes didn't leave mine, regardless of the fact that he was waving at the people. It wasn't until his carriage turned so distant it looked like a speck in the road that they resumed their daily activities. I was the last one to move from my position. For hours I stood there, watching as Luca's carriage exited our border. Even when he left, I remained standing, hoping that somehow his carriage would reappear and he would hug me goodbye. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen because nobody could know that I was his. It didn't happen because he still had a title to uphold and a promise to keep to all 4 kingdoms. As I stood there, sand piling up my toes and wind gushing through my hair. I convinced myself it was for the better. If everybody knew I was his, we would have to wed immediately. Not only that, but I would be accused of wrongfully taking the royal guard status. The castle would also demand I have his cups the day we are wedded, and I didn't want that. All I wanted was a hug goodbye. A kiss goodbye. It all passed so quickly. 3 days felt like 3 minutes with him. It made me realize that I wanted to lay by his side for all eternity. It made me regret not kissing him more, not wrapping my arms around him more. All hand grabbed my wrist, forcing me to turn around. It was 𝐊𝐸. It's been 3 hours. 𝐊𝐸. I think the pack members are starting to get worried. He tilted his head, examining me. Would you like to sleep at 𝐊𝐢𝐬 and 𝐊𝐲 tonight? Please, I said, rubbing my chest at the newfound hollowness in my chest. That would be very nice. Well then, come along now. There's no need for you to grab any pajamas. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 always kept an extra pair of pajamas for you. I was quickly feeling very emotional. Just the thought that 𝐊𝐢𝐬 had an extra set of sleepwear in hopes that I would appear forced my heart to clench painfully and my eyes to water awfully so. I swallowed and slipped my hand out of 𝐊𝐸's. He frowned but obliged. Are you all right? He asked, noticing the redness coating my eyes. I nodded, yes. It was a 2-story traditional northern home. Not too small but definitely not big. Just the right amount of cozy. The walls were a beautiful burgundy, coated with shelves that held hundreds of books I was sure were for 𝐊𝐢𝐬 and surrounded by paintings crafted by 𝐊𝐸. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 hung them up today. He smiled, removed the metal parts of his armor, said they'll make me miss painting. Is it working? I asked. He nodded. Suddenly, his eyes brightened and his head snapped to mine. Would you like to paint under the stars tonight? My lips parted as question. Would you like to paint under the stars tonight? The last time I heard those words were 6 years ago. I gulped and nodded, so absolutely shocked I had nothing to say. A smile rose to 𝐊𝐸's lips and he nodded back. I'll get the canvas ready. The night was a blur, as 𝐊𝐸 and I sat under the illuminating stars, brushes in one hand and paints in the other. We didn't have to speak to connect. We were aware that I was feeling lonely and that 𝐊𝐸 was feeling guilty, and that deeply resonated within our artworks. For I painted a wave the color of blue hitting a gray shore and 𝐊𝐸, a door with a beautiful woman behind it. It was beautiful, all until we saw a rocket fly above us, all until we heard screams erupt from the other side of the city. Chapter 30. The West had struck us. Hundreds of Northerners were reduced to nothing but a pile of bones and melted skin at the sheer power of the rocket the Westerners sent us. As I stood in the midst of all the panic, hidden behind the array of screaming citizens and nurses running to aid them, I wondered why in the world they would fight us. Why would they initiate yet another war? Did they know of the prophecy? Did they know I was mated to the king of all wolves? I couldn't help but think I was the reason they decided to cold-bloodedly murder innocent citizens. It was this voice nagging in the back of my head. It's your fault. They want you dead, but they don't have the courage to touch you. My jaw clenched and I ran back to the river mansion, hair swaying in the wind and dress flying. Goddess, I was so angry I didn't bother telling any of the shocked citizens to move. Rather, I just pushed past them and even knocked some to the ground. I didn't have time to apologize. I had to leave home as soon as possible. I had to gather my belongings and run back to the castle where I would be with Luca, where they wouldn't dare attack. I wanted to scream as I ran. I wanted to curse the goddess for making the Northerners go through such a thing. I burst through the door of my house and ran upstairs, feet crushing the glass of the broken windows furthermore, and put on my armor. Without a second thought, I strapped my swords to my back and my thighs. I didn't want my family to think that I had run away without reason, so I wrote an ode expressing my deepest apologies. Suddenly, the witch came to my thoughts. Hastily, I added that I would be taking a horse and that wretched witch with me. Finally ready, I ran to the dungeon and sprinted down the steps of the underground cells. The guard protecting the witch's door jumped awake at the sight of me, eyes flying open and mouth slacking. "Guard, give me the keys to the door," I ordered, palm extending. "Now, but I don't have time. Soldier," I warned. "Either you give me the keys or I will have to blind you to take them away." And he stabbed his hands into the pockets of his armor and handed me the key, hands shaking. I snatched them from him and stuck the key into the lock, opening the cell. It smelled of rotten death, of nasty soil and dirt. The witch was already awake, startled even. "You're coming with me." I grabbed her by the neck, forcing her to stand up. "What happened?" she croaked. "The West attacked us." I kept my answers short as we went up the stairs. She was mumbling words under her breath. Not spells, rather profanities. The witch was terrified, and if she was terrified, it meant I had to be too. We whizzed past the people and sped to the stables where I claimed a black horse and threw the witch onto its back, not before making sure she was tied properly against it. Taking a deep breath, I mounted the horse and whipped its back, forcing it to jump awake. The witch, whose arms were still chained, held on to me as to not fall, and I hated it. The horse sprinted out of the stables and into the market, catching the eyes of several buyers. Goddess, I looked like a thief with the witch on my book. I just hoped Father would explain to his people that I was doing this out of goodwill and not ill intent. I just hoped that I would remain the daughter of the North in their eyes. We reached the border where two guards laid, up and awake, their brows furrowed at the sight of the witch behind me. "Royal Guard, we ask that you return the witch back to her cell." The light-haired guard spoke, hands held above his dagger. I swallowed before shaking my head. "I cannot do that. We do not want to fight you, daughter of the North." "Then don't," I said, almost begging. The first guard pulled his sword from his back and rose a brow. "We will not ask again." I whipped the horse twice and it roared, rushing past them men and out of the North. The men shifted to their wolves and chased me. I let out a grunt, urging the horse to run faster, but it couldn't. No horse could outrun a wolf. "Make the horse run faster than a lion," I shouted. "Give this creature legs of a panther and the soul of a warrior." The horse roared as its legs moved faster. "Give him the strength of a bison and the heart of a lion." The horse moved with speed so robust I couldn't make out the bodies of the soldiers that were following us. His speed was giving even I whiplash. No longer could I see the mountains or palm trees coating almost every inch of the northern desert. Rather, all I could see were lines, colors, and shapes. His speed made the world seem like a stroke of paint moving through a canvas. As we made it farther away from the border, I began thinking, where would be safe for me? I thought about my initial plan. Go to Luca and remain in the castle until you can figure out the meaning of the prophecy the goddess had stumped you with. But even that seemed too dangerous. If the Westerners were unruly enough to attack us, knowing full well they still had debts to pay us, who's to say they wouldn't murder Luca? Again, I asked myself, where is a place I can hide to protect not only the kingdom, but also myself? Images of my past, my thoughts. Memories of me longingly strolling through the outskirts, begging to find a trace of lichened life hit me harder than an arrow striking the heart. It was as if the place was calling for me, pulling me into its abyss by a rope. So I followed its path. I followed the path my heart wanted me to take. I followed the path that would protect Luca, that would protect Nader, Talia, slay man and my family. By sunrise, I reached the wall of tall, violet trees, the wall that stretched for thousands of miles without end, where the green grass stopped and where the dark, rotten soil began. The horse was too large to pass through the maze of trees coating every inch of the dark soil, so I jumped off it and untied the witch from its back. Tell the horse to run back to the north safely. Mention that, if I call for it even once, it will find its way back to me. I ordered the witch, and make sure to mention that we are both thankful for its service. With gritted teeth, the witch nodded and began chanting spells into the horse's ear. The horse bowed to me, eyes closing, before running back to its home, hair swiveling through the wind and feet moving faster than light can comprehend. I turned around to face the outskirts, heart beating out of my chest and breath stuck in my throat. Revolution. The prophecy mentioned that revolution would rise and that it would rise raw. Maybe this was the beginning of the end. Chapter 31. You could have at least helped. The witch mumbled, walking silently beside me. I snatched my head to her, glaring. Every second I spend with them is a second I put them in danger. Witch. My name's Caitlin Warthorne. Thank you, she scoffed, patting down her dirty skirt. Well, Caitlin, I'd rather you not guilt-trip me for saving my entire kingdom from more fire. But the Westerners took down an entire city. I could have casted a spell and helped them a bit. I'm sure you can cast a spell without being there. Caitlin. I gritted my teeth. I'd rather call you Kate. She huffed, staring straight ahead as she rubbed the back of her neck. There was a moon-shaped scar right below where her hair stopped where I had marked her with my dagger. It was a symbol signifying to other witches that her soul was owned by somebody other than her, whether it be a lichen or a seer. I was actually beginning to feel guilty that I was so rough with her because, while she did almost murder Laura, it wasn't really her that wanted to do it. It was the witch of all witches. Anxiety swarmed throughout my entire being as I wondered how in the world I would take her down. The bitch had 7 monsters guarding her. 700. I didn't know how she was able to conquer such a wild number of outskirt soldiers. Well, I began, coughing into my hand. Can you begin casting the spell? What spell? The spell to fix up the explosion. Kate, I said, running a stressed hand through my hair. You'll need to get home. First. She stopped walking and faced me. Give me your hands, why? So I could take us back home. Girl, devil witch girl. She hissed, eyes angry. Hesitantly, I placed my hands in hers. They were warm and wrinkled, like Alice's hands but much prettier and delicate. It was only then, when I was right in front of her, that I noticed she was quite beautiful. Pale skin, pink lips and bright blue eyes. She looked like a queen in the purple atmosphere of the atmosphere. You look very different, I mentioned. How so? Much. I paused, pushing down my pride. Much prettier than when I first saw you. Our beauty only shines in the outskirts. Girl, devil witch, girl. But I've seen much uglier witches in here. That's because those witches don't bother caring for their skin, bodies, or scents. They may also just be too old to care, she explained. Now shut it so I can focus. All right, I said, tone offended. Air of darkness, aura of fire. Her eyes slid shut. Take me home, place of warmth and no dire. The world blurred around me and suddenly, my feet were slammed to the ground. I fell immediately, gasping at the large force pulling me downwards. Never had I felt something so powerful, so robust that it was like 100 rocks were placed right above my ankles. I forgot to mention that it's best you shut your eyes when teleporting. Though my ears were ringing, I caught the witch snickering once my eyes opened. I was in a house with wooden floors shrouded in carpets, warm lights and tall bookshelves filled to the brim with wonderful leather spines. Dizzy, I stood up, more like stumble forward, but we won't mention that inside. Surprisingly, the house made me feel comfortable and even somewhat safe. It was weird because when I visited the witch that disguised herself as my mother, I felt very peculiar and out of place. But with Kate, I felt normal. Make yourself comfortable, Kate said, pulling a glass gap out of her cupboard. As comfortable as someone who owns my soul should be. Guilt spread through my body. I had to, I said. You would have killed me if I didn't. You're not wrong. Kate poured my water into her glass, but I still despise you for it. As you should, I guess. I fell onto her couch, removing my dagger and both my swords from my armor. They were too heavy. What are we going to do now? She asked, sitting in front of me in her rocking chair. What you're going to do is explain the prophecy and tell me which seer predicted it. I watched. She shook her head. What? You really cannot see what it means? She asked. I shook my head. A lichen with eyes of time brings which is their cause of demise. A sword as bright as the moon strikes the heart of 𝐿𝐿𝐲𝐿𝐬. Revolution rises raw and time no longer brews. She placed her cup on the table, pausing to gather her thoughts. Eyes of time symbolizes someone with green eyes. The heart of magic's �K𝐝 either means the queen of witches or her home. As for time, no longer brews. I have no idea what that means. So you're suggesting I might kill the queen. The witch's eyes shined, a small smile gripping her lips. Maybe. And you're okay with that? Most certainly. The witch leaned into her couch. Someone that powerful should not exist. Girl. The woman can control almost anything she lays her eyes on. If she had a seer by her side, she would be invincible. She gulped. She can change the way you see reality. If she wants you to see a 10-foot monsters in front of you, she'll make it happen. Even if it doesn't exist. Even if it doesn't exist. She repeated. Rumor has it that even the trees part when she walks past them. I still don't understand. I confessed. If she's that powerful and knows I exist, why doesn't she just kill me? Where's the fun in that? Is what she would say to you. Plus, she doesn't know what you look like. If she knew what you looked like, she would most certainly bring you to her and have her. Kate cringed. Her fun with you. What kind of fun? I asked. Worried? You know, the usual. Or reality. Trap you in your own mind. Take you to the past and make you relive your worst memories again and again. Force you to murder someone you love. Kate shook her head. I will never understand why the goddess allowed our power to be so lawless. I shivered. How do I know that she isn't in control of me now? How do I know that everything around me is real? Birds. Kate said. If you hear and see one, you are not part of a witch's game. Even if it's a crow. 𝐖𝐨𝐷. I looked out the window and, to my luck, a crow was sat on a tree branch with dark purple leaves. I sighed in relief, head falling to the couch. Relax. You're alive, she assured. Why birds? Any creature that has wings cannot be influenced by a witch. They're angelic. Graceful. How would I get out of it? All you have to do is know that you're not under her spell. My jaw slacked. That's it. It'll put it into perspective. Kate began. Nobody has ever escaped her spell. Some Lycans have been stuck in their heads, living a life the queen wants them to for more than 70 years. Oh yeah, she said. Oh, I swallowed down a lump of emotions. Overwhelmed. It really should have not been possible for someone to be that powerful. How about I continue explaining the prophecy? Please. I ushered. Until years have passed. Time will no longer debut. Only orchids with souls as dark as nights warm the kingdom of all wolves. Kate continued. This is confusing because the time mentioned here could mean a lot of things. It could mean the green grass, that it may all turn purple. It could also mean that your eyes may change, or that you may die in the process. What? Let me finish. I gulped at her and nodded. The orchids, they can signify a person. More specifically, someone with either blue or purple eyes, since orchids are either blue or purple. Luca. I let out. He has bright blue eyes. Is he your lover? She rose her brow. Akin. Perhaps. I nodded. Then he is probably who the prophecy has mentioned. She said, to continue until the warrior hears the trumpets. She will remain in her cage, leaving behind trumpets and rampage. She stopped talking after that. Completely. Kate just grabbed her glass of water and sipped on it. I watched as each one of her nails began painting themselves a deep red and my lips parted. Are you not going to explain? I asked. I have no idea what that line means. She held her newly painted nails in front of her. Plus, I'd rather paint my nails. How do you do that? Luxury of being a witch. Girl. Suddenly tired and somewhat impressed. I shut my eyes and leaned further into the couch. It was a lot to handle, the fact that I made I while battling the witch. The fact that I was even going to meet the most powerful being on earth made my heart accelerate painfully and my mind wander to places so dark the cosmos were envious. I didn't want to be prophesied. I didn't want to even be mentioned. For once, I wanted to be completely normal, and Omega even. You remind me of someone. Kate interrupted my attempt at sleeping who. She answered after a while, as though she were preparing herself to speak. It made me curious, so I opened my eyes to look at her. My daughter, she mumbled, eyes lowering. Immediately, I sat up. How old is she? 16, Kate said. Well, so well. She was supposed to turn 16 this month. My mouth shut. For this first in my life, I felt bad for her. I was feeling bad for a witch. Of all creatures, a wretched witch. Maybe it was the downcast expression on her face, or the way her eyes lowered when she mentioned her daughter-ride Aunt Nell. All I knew is that I felt guilty for a species that was responsible for 6 years' worth of my fears. I'm sorry for your loss, I uttered. She died a quick death. Girl, it could have been much worse. I'd rather she be with the goddess than trapped. She flailed her arms around. Here, Pyre, if I may. I swallowed. How did she die? The queen makes us prove our loyalty by sacrificing something we love. Can't you just not do it? It was either that or she killed the both of us. Wow, I was disgusted at how vile such a being was. And to think Lucas' mother was bad. Mina turned herself in to save me. Kate took a deep breath. I raised the girl right. But she was so selfless. So hard not to love. You're saying I'm not hard to love. I said, trying to lighten the mood. Kate's lips rose to one side. I'm sure you'll groan on me. Regardless of the fact that you kept me in a box for almost 4 days. How did you survive that? Made myself small enough to be comfortable. She held a finger to her lips. But don't tell the guards. They might make the boxes smaller. I chuckled, shaking my head. Aside from the fact that you manipulated me into thinking you were my friend. Littered castle grounds with outskirt soil in order to bring over monsters and almost kill Lara, I don't hate you as much as I should. I'm not going to say I'm glad because my pride can only take so much. She said, but thank you. Anytime. Which? This generation of kids is the rudest I've ever seen. She huffed, standing up. Would you like some food while we discuss how horrible the queen is? I would rather we discuss how to build an army large enough to fight the queen. Kate, I said, standing up. I would also like to help you cook some food. I have a theory, but it may be completely wrong. Spit it out. Well, to control a monster, it requires an immense amount of power. You must be focused on its heartbeat at all times and make sure you watch the way it actually does. It's almost impossible to have completely control over 7 monsters, unless she really is that powerful. Your point is, what if she Kate paused, shaking her head. What if she owns their soul the same way you own mine? I stilled. Never did I think marking a monster would give me control of its soul. Ever. In my 6 years of being in the outskirts, not once did I tell myself, oh, how about I puncture the back of this monster's neck instead of fight it? At that moment, I wondered why I never thought that. Well then, I regained my composure. A cool or a settling over me. I guess we have planned for tomorrow. What plans? We will try to capture the soul of a monster. You own my soul, so all right, Kate said, cracking an egg on the side of her bowl. Your wish is my command. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness rushed through me, one so strong I had to hold on to the kitchen counter to support my weight. I shut my eyes, spine bending at the strength of the ache in my head. It felt like something was poking, begging to have a place in my thoughts. I was trying my hardest to keep my wall up because I didn't know what in the world it was. I feared it was the witch. Really? What is it? Something wants to get in my head. I croaked. My knees buckled as another stab came. Let them in. Then, Kate said, the witch does not know what you look like, girl. So it's not her. How would you know? I just do. Anxiety rushed through my entire body all while this force was poking at the back of my head, trying to probe itself into my thoughts. I was shaking, scared and whimpering. I fell to my knees. holding my head in my hands. Kate rushed from my side and grabbed my wrists. Let them in. What if she was against me this whole time? What if Kate was with the witch and wanted me to succumb to her power? So many questions but so little answers and so much mind-bending pain. Let them in. Girl, why did I trust her so easily? Why did I allow her to take me to her home with just a hold of her hand? Why was I growing so much stumper with every passing day? Leela added. Let them in. Unable to withstand the pain any longer, the walls in my head crashed and my mind was immediately filled with a cold gush of wind. It was as though they were knocking, telling me that someone was there. It was foreign, but heavy, as though somebody else was inside my brain. Verd, are you there? Luca asked.